What is up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by Mike Wahle. A beautiful Mike Wahle Thursday. Great discussion today. Really think you're going to enjoy it. We go over a little bit of everything, obviously talking about Packers Seahawks. We look forward to Packers Saints. We go over the defensive back. We go over everything. Edgerrin Cooper and the way he's playing. Josh Myers. So definitely stick around for this one. It's going to be a hopefully informative and fun episode. Always great catching up with Mike. Before we get there, a couple things I wanted to go over really quick. First of all, as I've been talking about, Milwaukee Admirals game this coming Saturday. I'm going to be doing a live Q&A prior to the game. It's going to be a ton of fun. There's going to be some legendary Packers there, including George Kuntz and Robert Brooks and Ed West. It's going to be a ton of fun. Plus, you get access to the game, the Q&A. I'm going to do a human hockey puck. You're not going to want to miss that. So you can get in for under $20. Get your tickets now. I will link to the tickets in today's episode, so make sure to check that out. Also want to shout out our brand new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube members, Camilo Jimenez and Ryan Kitzhaber. Thank you guys so much for signing up. Appreciate you guys a ton. If you have not yet checked out memberships, make sure to do so. Today, episode with Aaron Nagler and I, we go over, of course, Packers Saints coming up this week, previewing the game. And then also you get extra Ross Uglum content. So there's a bunch of stuff out there. Make sure to check that out. And of course, a members only Q&A every week as well. Speaking of live Q&As, we've got Pack-A-Day Live coming up tonight, 7 p.m. Central Time. So make sure to check that out. The one big piece of news and notes and noteworthy takeaway from Wednesday, unfortunately, it's bad news. We did find out per the Matt Schneidman show where he interviewed Matt LaFleur that Jordan Morgan is unfortunately going to be out for the year. So there is no return in place for Jordan Morgan this season. We'll have to wait for that till 2025. This does not have any sort of commentary on Jordan Morgan. He's still a very talented player. We don't need to jump to any conclusions on whether or not, we can wait, right? This is a 4-year plus one contract if they want to give him that 5th year option down the road. His future as a Packer is well in front of him. He already got opportunities to start this year and rotate in. He's going to be a good player. He's going to be a valuable offensive lineman. And if I were a betting man today, I would say that he's a likely starter in game 1 going into next year. So let's give this a little bit of time before we jump to, oh, he's a bust or they shouldn't have taken him or anything like that. A long way to go, and you can never have enough good offensive linemen. I'm very, very hopeful that Jordan Morgan pick's still going to pay pretty big dividends down the line. Unfortunately, Jordan Morgan not able to bounce back from a tough injury this year, but the Packers in general do know how to bounce back from tough hits. If you've been hit with an injury after an accident, the team of highly skilled attorneys at Habish & Rotier can help you receive the right compensation to help you bounce back from your injury. Habish has been successfully resolving claims for over 90 years, and their attorneys have an experience and expertise to get you back in the game. When you call Habish, you'll talk to a lawyer directly. It's easy to get a hold of them. Their number is 800-242-2874 or 800-2HABISH. I cannot stress enough how awesome it is that you're going to talk to a lawyer right away. You can also visit their website at habish.com. Habish & Rotier, national reputation, hometown service. Now, let's get to our chat with Mike Wahle. All right, friends, we are joined by the great Mike Wahle. You can find him on Twitter at MikeWahle68. Of course, you can find his great YouTube channel on Process to Perform. Block Party, I always want to still say on my block, but the Block Party show is epic every single week. Mike, great to have you back on. How are you doing, my friend?
Andy, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always great to be chatting with you. Fun one this week. Packers pick up a win against the Seahawks. Want your thoughts on that? Where Green Bay's headed from here? We'll talk about all of it. We'll break it all down. But I want to start. I'll give you the floor. Packers, Seahawks. What were kind of your key takeaways from that particular game?
Well, the Packers come in as favorites. So the expectation is they're going to win. Really, the toss-up for you is Lumen Field going to be enough of a home field advantage to make this game close? Because I just think on paper the Packers are a superior team. Defensively, Green Bay is it was so fun to watch. Their defense is so fun to watch just in general. We talk about it every week. But this week, You kind of looked at the matchup and the defensive line. TJ Slayton dominated this game in the run game. And schematically, even when they didn't have the right play dialed up, in other words, even when Seattle maybe had the right call from a leverage and number standpoint, the guy who needed to win the 1v1 to blow the play up did the job. And it was really nice to see the defensive line really dominate the interior offensive line of the Seattle Seahawks. And then obviously, once Geno even before Geno got hurt, they were giving out sacks like candy canes. But once Geno got hurt, you can just see this shift in confidence between the Green Bay Packers defensive line going, oh, there's blood in the water, it's hunting season, and the Seattle offense in general just going like, I can't remember what they said on the live broadcast, whether he had given up, been sacked 61 times or something the 2 years prior, but you're just going,
Yep.
You start watching the game, and I'm a Seattle fan, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, but as I put my Seattle hat on, and I go, like, holy shit, you could tell you could tell why he had been sacked 61 times or whatever the number was. But it was nice to see the defensive line winning 1v1s, winning with stunts, winning with the pressures, like everything was working.
Yeah.
And I said it on my show, you actually saw some new moves. We talked about it on your show. Maybe they listened last week. We actually saw some spin moves. We saw Lucas Van Ness try to spin move. It didn't work, but he tried it. Devontae Wyatt had a great spin for a sack. So you see guys doing some new stuff, expanding their games, and that part of it, I think, on the defensive side was really great to watch. And then you talk about Andy, like it's this team is so odd to watch because I remember I turned on the game. I think I missed the first two series because I was on a plane flight.
Sure.
And the game's already like 14-0 or something, and everyone's going, "Oh, Josh Jacobs just handled it," and he ends up finishing the game with less than 100 yards. He averages like 3.6 yards a carry. The whole team only averages 4 yards a carry. So it's not this dominant run game. But the one thing that stood out, and I haven't been able to verbalize this the right way for the entire season, and hopefully this hits right. What Josh Jacobs does that we can't quantify is he allows this team to start fast every week. Just by default. They can always start on the front foot, no matter because of the way he runs, because of the way he receives the ball out of the backfield and makes the first guy miss and runs through the second tackle and runs through the third tackle until the fourth guy finally gets him down. Because of the way we don't even have to block linebackers at times, even if the scheme's not right, because he can make that guy miss. He allows this team to always start fast. Like the offense is coming in with the horns down, everybody is starting fast. The offensive line has confidence. The receivers are always blocking hard. Jordan Love doesn't have to throw the ball 42 times this game. All those things are possible, I think, because of what Josh Jacobs, this kind of like non-quantifiable aura that Josh Jacobs brings to this offense that you don't even have to see during the course of the entire game. But that first quarter, it just seems like, for the last couple of weeks, it's his numbers in the first quarter are reflective of a guy who's going to rush for like 3,000 yards on the season. It never ends up that way during the course of the game, but it puts them in a position where it's like, okay, now everything works. Jordan Love doesn't have to throw the ball 40 times. Like the last 3 weeks of his stat line, a lot of people are going to talk about him and how well he's playing, but that's really just a consequence of they're in this really fantastic position after the first or second quarter every single week. And a lot of that is in large part due to the play calling, the execution, but Josh Jacobs and the confidence that he instills, I think, in the other 10 members of the offensive team.
It's amazing how much that fast start matters because it's such a great juxtaposition in this game. Charbonnet, I think, averaged over 5 yards per carry. Seattle ran the ball well when they got the opportunities, but they're down 14-0 right away. They go away from the run game and they can't continue to do it. Green Bay has the luxury going up 14-0 and playing the majority of the game up 3 scores that they can continue to run the ball. It is interesting, obviously, that the last handful of weeks, I would say, that run game has sort of waned as the game has gone along. Is that to you, defense is adjusting and stacking the box more? Is that the offensive line is just not consistent enough yet? Is that Josh Jacobs wearing down throughout the course of the game? Where do you kind of put that as the Packers maybe can't sustain maybe some of that success that they're having early in the game with the run offense?
Well, let's just look at I think it was the second play in the game where they've got a spread, two wide receivers on the left, one receiver split on the right, tight end in the backfield, offset, pistol formation, and they throw the swing pass. It really is just a run. It's a toss sweep to the left, and they pull Josh Myers. Josh Myers had a great game, by the way, probably the best game I've seen him play, and just because he did so well in space and the double teams are fantastic. He still made mistakes, but one of the best games I've seen him play. But Josh Jacobs catches the ball on technically just a toss and ends up running for 12, 13 yards. And I think what happens is Matt LaFleur's got all these things in his bag that you haven't seen yet, whether it's schematically, they've got him spread out too much, whether he's running plays like like that, and then they end up running the end around, I think, in the third or fourth quarter off the same look. He's got all these things you just haven't seen. So, when you get down to bread and butter stuff, a lot of defenses can scheme against that. The other team has good players as well. It's hard. And I thought that the Green Bay Packers had more clinic double teams in this game than I think they've had in a long time. But, that being said, there's going to be just a handful of plays where a good defensive line and good depth on the Seattle box 7 players are going to be able to stop a lot of the stuff that they've already seen. But you're talking about in the first quarter, there's so much stuff they haven't seen yet by formation, by personnel, that I think that just, you can only bring in so many new plays in 1 week, and you can only dress it up so many different ways. And I think the struggle is for the Packers is like, do I have 4 quarters worth of new plays that we can introduce, or do I have to go back and grind out some of these, split flow belly stuff? And when they do that, like, how successful are we going to be? Because it's not always going to be a light box. It's not always going to be guys, having to, window dress the RPO look on with, Jordan Love on the backside. I mean, some of the stuff they do, and we can get into like the X's and O's of it, because some of the stuff they do is really, really smart. And it just puts one position in particular in a real bind. But most defenses have prepped for a lot of this stuff, and it's the stuff I think that they haven't been able to prep for that week that they get them early with.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I think overall it's been such a huge value add. And again, just like you said, that confidence going into a game, having Josh Jacobs, and just I thought the first drive in this one was just beautiful. Just basically saying, we're going to give the ball to Josh Jacobs. You're not going to be able to stop him. We're going to score. We're going to be up 7-0 right away. It was just a really fun way to kind of, set the tone in that game, and really have no resistance getting into the end zone. That was a ton of fun. Just going back really quick to what you said about the defense, I'm so glad you brought up TJ Slayton. It was somebody that Matt LaFleur I think it was LaFleur brought up as well, saying that he's playing some of his best football and what he's doing. Do you know how many snaps he played in this game?
He probably didn't play that many. It's just kind of, I don't know, but he just stands out. Sometimes when you're watching tape, like, guys just kind of pop off the screen. You're like, man, he just every time, like, is that 93 again? Like, holy hell! How many was it?
It was 13, like only 13 snaps in this game, but like super impactful 13 snaps. And I'm so glad you brought him up, because he's one of those players, especially in this game, that you could probably go the entire week having, 10 conversations about the game and he might not get brought up. But what he did, especially in the run game, he brought the old gravedigger shovel out on one play, wearing the number 93. Yeah, like, he was just getting off of double teams, getting off of blocks, and stopping the run really, really well. I've been really impressed with him as of late. They're going to have an interesting offseason decision if they want to bring him back. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in the offseason, but overall, very happy with him. Obviously, from a defensive side of things as well, one of the key players that did get a lot of talk this week, unlike maybe TJ Slayton, was Edgerrin Cooper. What were your impressions of Edgerrin Cooper and what he brings to this defense, and how they maybe look a little bit different with him out there?
He's a good old fashioned football player, and he just happens to be a really good athlete. Obviously he gets. All these guys are going to get more notoriety when you get the sacks and you run in the pick stunts. And so a lot of that is a function of the defensive coordinator made a good football call. And like when he got the sack and he picked Tomlinson, I'm watching that because I'm an offensive lineman. I'm watching that play and I'm going, Lakin, like, do you not know that they're going to go double A gaps like the Bears did for the last 20 years and pick you like they've been doing? Like, why did you set flat? That's stupid. But what the Packers do to flip that, the Packers do is like on the defense, they're not missing the gimmies. They used to miss those gimmies, man. They don't miss gimmies anymore. And guys like Edgerrin Cooper, just why do they not miss gimmies, Mike? Well, because they brought in guys who don't miss gimmies. Evan Williams doesn't miss gimmies. Xavier doesn't miss gimmies. Cooper does not. If you're going to give him a gift wrap present, he's going to open it. And their players in the National Football League, as talented as they are, they miss gimmies. And I think what you have now is you have a bunch of dudes that are really young, but I always go back to Minkah Fitzpatrick in Miami. I was just like, I was always kind of like, wow, he's different than everybody else on this team. Like he doesn't make like rookie mistakes. He doesn't miss gimmies. And Edgerrin Cooper, he reminds me of that kind of just personality, on-field presence, confidence, all of that. Like he takes what you're going to give him. If you're going to make a mistake, he's going to take advantage of it. I really like the Um, I really like the way that this linebacker group has developed over the course of the year.
Agreed.
I think you can make a lot of comments about. Listen, I'm not as big into the passing game, obviously, as other commentators are, and you do understand there are some issues there in the passing game. But me, this season, we wanted this team to be able to stop the run and consistently stop the run, get tackles for loss at a higher clip than they have the last 3-4 years. And I think they've done a really good. It feels like they've done a good job of that. I know there's garbage time numbers and this and that, like Charbonnet's touchdown. It's like, okay, it's like you put it on the highlight tape because it's got to be there, but who cares?
Yep.
But when it matters, I think they've made a lot more plays this year. They're much more downhill aggressive. We talked about it on this podcast a lot. I think the issue you have there is I still think I think Quay Walker's an improving player, but you're going to have a numbers issue at that position, and they're going to have to figure out where everybody fits because I think it's clear that Cooper's is the star in the making in that room. I think every time Eric Wilson gets on the field, he plays really well. So it's really hard to kind of start looking and going, well, who's going to be there? How's that going to look in the next 2-3 years? But that's a fun room from sure. And Cooper's and just like a lot of these other young guys, like just guys that they if you're going to give them a present, they're going to take it. And I love that mentality and that way that Goody has been able to identify some of those people in the draft.
The influx of talent of Xavier McKinney, Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard in one offseason has been super instrumental. Obviously, getting Jeff Hafley as your defensive coordinator has helped a ton as well. But all four of those guys, I love watching play, just the way that they play football. You mentioned the big plays and the sacks and the interceptions, and that's going to get you a lot of notoriety. My favorite Cooper play in this one wasn't a sack, wasn't an interception. It was that Jackson Smith and Jigba little screen over the middle of the field where he just kind of he reads it and shoots up and just goes and attacks him right away. That to me, just again, love the play from him. The fact that he was able to diagnose it so quick and then just again get from point A to point B, like you said, not only does he have the instincts and he's just an old school football player, but then he adds in the ridiculous athleticism as well. That to me was just like a play. I'm like, oh my goodness, like you see the big plays and then you go back and watch the film and you see that and you see a couple really nice. It was definitely in garbage time on that last drive, but he's got I think the last 2 tackles of the game are Edgerrin Cooper as well. Like he's got 2 tackles on teams, 2.5. He had the one that held up on the big hit for Eric Wilson as well. I think Matt LaFleur said they credit him with 3 special teams tackles. So I guess he got credit for that one too, but just all over the place. He's just a really, really fun player.
Yep. Watching tape matters. You can tell some of these guys come into the National Football League. I'll never forget different kind of side story, but Lofa Tatupu came into the National Football League. He was getting coached by Ken Norton Jr. at USC. And so I remember like Lofa is out there Lofa's a rookie. He's calling our plays out. Jim Mora Jr. is his coach, his defense coordinator at Seattle. And, I obviously went and played there a couple of years later. And I'm like, how the hell are you calling our plays out? You're a rookie, rookie year. And he goes, I had Ken Norton Jr. teaching me in college. Like that, all of that matters. So you get these, like, why do you get guys from big programs early on? Well, because it's more likely than not that the guys that are coaching them have probably been in the show and know how to watch film and know how to prepare and know how to do all this stuff. And so you get these guys that are super athletes, and a lot of them are coming tailor-made to play in NFL systems and watch film and be miniature. They've been pros since they were 17, 18 years old. And I think you're seeing the result of some of these guys going to big programs that have just high level coaching at an early age and have carried on all those routines and habits that make you a good pro. And have that kind of mindset coming in, and then matching that with the athletic skill set that they have. It's something special, and I think I'm sure Goody that's some sort of consideration. As opposed to like myself coming to the Naval Academy, like you can say you have a lot of maybe discipline, routine, just don't know how to play football. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be a really, really steep learning curve for a guy like me, but for these guys, like the learning curves, it's been apparent. It's Evan Williams. The learning curve's not that steep, and It's just amazing that you can come in, and the level of the NFL from all schematic and prep standpoint is lower than it used to be. That's fair, but the difference between a really, really high level college player and a pro is getting that gap's getting shorter and shorter, and it really can benefit an organization if you got a guy like Goody who can identify that and bring in the right players. And it's fantastic. I mean, that's why the Packers always have success.
Yeah, he's done a great job in this offseason, especially on defense is another great example of that. You mentioned the pass rush, the pressure up front, trying some new things, the spin moves, everything like that. In your opinion, was this just plain Seattle's offensive line? Was this a little bit of fool's gold, or did they discover something? And is this something that they can carry over into the remainder of the season?
I think there's two things. One, I felt really bad for the right guard of Seattle because I think if you've ever played offensive line, you've been there where like every single play sucked. It was just really it was tough. Tough.
Yeah.
It's actually tough to watch, to be fair.
Surprised they didn't go to
the
their
other,
third round pick Christian Haynes at any point. I know he hasn't had exactly like a strong start to the year either, but I thought they'd go to him at some point. They didn't. I think he had a handful of snaps, but not much.
yeah, they've struggled at various positions across the interior offensive line, and then obviously Abraham being hurt was a problem for a couple of weeks, and so
Yeah.
it's just I know it's just been a struggle up there. But listen, that's like you got to show up and play. That's not the Packers' problem. I think if you're looking at Seattle though, 90% of the pressure is coming from that area. And listen, if I have to drop back and pass set against guys who know that the quarterback holds the football, I mean, Geno holds the football, but now we're talking about this guy who gives, again, I keep going back to like 61. I know that's not the real number, but it's something crazy like that. I mean, there's a confidence shift. If you guys are both entering the game, like we're both pretty confident in this game, and all of a sudden your starting quarterback goes out, right? And then you give up, and there's a couple seconds. It just starts going like this. And the chasm between those, and I'm just telling you, the Green Bay Packers defensive line, they would still be playing that game if they had the option. Like they would never have left the field because they know it's like, I can make a lot of money tonight. I mean, Jesus, Enikbari, what do you have, 3 sacks?
Yeah, I think 2 in a tackle for a loss, something like that.
Yeah,
right
the one you're just going, you're yelling at the screen like throw the ball. I don't even care if he does or not. It's wild. So those situations. I mean, listen. Anytime you get to work on new stuff and it works, you build confidence. I think that's fantastic. And clearly, like some of the stunts and everything that they're running, there's a reason that they've had success with some of this stuff historically. Anyways, like they haven't been able to beat guys one-on-one. So they've the pressures, the stunts, all that. It's been successful this year in creating some sort of pass rush. But if you can get Devontae White to get one, he's good for one a game. You get Andy Barry, who's good for one a game. All of a sudden, Carl Brooks had the double swipe rip that ended up with Rashawn Gary, who was being blocked, got knocked off, and got his sack. Carl Brooks had the other one on Laken Tomlinson, who bull rushed him, and then ended up. I mean, so these guys are starting to win, and whether or not it's a function of the crowd noise was gone or blah 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 blah, it doesn't really matter, man. Like that all of that stuff builds confidence, and you feel better about yourself the next week. It'll be interesting to see. They're going into a game. Obviously, we haven't hit it yet, but the Saints backup quarterback, blah blah blah. There's a lot going on there as well. So maybe 2 weeks in a row there.
Yeah, hopefully they can carry it over, and it's going to be such a key part of this team moving forward. Is if they can continue to get that pressure, if they want to make that big playoff run. You brought up the crowd noise a couple times. Obviously, the Packer fans showed up in a big way. You heard "Go Pack, Go" chants early in this game. As a player, does that affect you on either side? If you're an away team and you have a bunch of home fans there, does that help you out? Does it just help in the fact that it's not as loud from a opposing side of things? If you're a player and your home crowd's not showing up and there's more fans from not more, but like enough fans from the other team that it's vocal, does that affect you in it? Like how, or is it just a non-factor? Like how do you view that?
I mean, okay, so if it's not as loud, I mean, Lumen Field is one of the loudest fields in this. I was shocked, quite frankly, that there's so many Packers fans because that they as Packer fans travel well, but Seattle Seahawks fans are diehards, and so you were shocked to actually see that, quite frankly.
Agreed.
And I've been on both sides of the ball there. You go down back in the day, go down to San Diego, and 3/4 of the place is the Packers fans, and I always thought to myself like, oh, this is a home field game for us. This is fantastic, and it's not loud. It's very easy to play in. And I've been in Carolina where second quarter, if we weren't winning the game, everybody would leave. And you kind of there's a part of you that goes, wait a second, you don't care about it in the middle of the game, but you do. There is an acknowledgement of like, it would be nice for somebody to make this more difficult so Julius Peppers can get off and get a sack. There's a little bit of like, we'd like a little bit of help here. But I think logistically, offensively, if you go to a place and it's not very loud, offensively, it really does help you because you don't have to worry about the silent count and all the advantages they have there. If they're erased, those teams bake that into their projections for sure. Like that, I can just tell you, like Seattle goes in and going like, well, we're going to get 2 false starts from like they're baking in those penalties. The expectation is you're going to get all that stuff. You're going to get an extra sack or an extra tackle for loss. You're going to get all of that because of the crowd noise. And so if you don't have it, it certainly kind of messes with the algorithm.
No, I was stunned by it as well. It was awesome to see. Kudos to the Packer fans who showed up in Seattle. And anytime you hear those "Go Pack Go" chants early in the game, it's like, okay, hits a little bit different. I remember Steven Jackson for the Rams back in the day being so upset in St. Louis because it was all Packers fans there. I was in there at a game. I think it was the one he actually got upset at. I was in that game or at the game in St. Louis, and it was all Packer fans, and it definitely changes the tenor of the game. And Steven Jackson was not happy about it after that game. All right, bizarre tangent here. Forgive me for this. Not tangent, but like just different thread. You brought up Julius Peppers. There's been something that's come up on the live chat on a couple different occasions. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Take Julius Peppers' time just with the Green Bay Packers. All right, so just his time with Green Bay. Who was the better pass rusher just in their time in Green Bay, Clay Matthews or Julius Peppers?
Who's the better pass rusher?
Or who, you can do player too.
Clay Matthews.
Okay.
Clay Matthews.
That's what I said too.
It's not. I don't think it's even. I'm just trying to think if it's even close. Gosh, let me think about that. Let me put it to this way:
that Peppers is the better player overall, like just careers compared.
I don't think that's any question. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I would say it this way. I guess the better way to. There's 2 ways to answer that question. Clay had something about him. He had great moves. He had great counters, and he was strong. He was explosive. So he just had a lot of physical traits, and he had moves. Pep, I don't know even how to explain this. So Pep, when we used to work out in Carolina, there was 12-foot ceilings. Okay. We used to have to do a combine. And so you had to do broad jump, high, all of it, right?
Sure.
They had to remove the panels in the ceiling for the high jump with that 12-foot ceiling. So that's what you're dealing with. So when you say pass rush, like Pep didn't really have moves. And I'm not like trying to be, I mean, people probably tell you, he's like, it's like, how do you beat somebody? Well, I kind of run up to them and then like whatever they do, I just do something that's not going to, it's going to make it bad for them.
Right.
Like he didn't have moves. He doesn't practice moves. So the frightening thing about Pep was you knew that like if you were off balance a little bit, like it was probably over because he was such a better athlete than you. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's more. There's nothing you had on him, right? He's got body fat. I had body fat on him. That was it. I mean, everything else you're kind of screwed. So it's actually maybe it's not as obvious as I might blurt it out because I think of Clay and I think, oh, he's got that great spin, he's got the swipe, he's got the pull, but then you're like, yeah, but you can't even touch Pep. He's got a 7-foot wingspan.
It's still amazing to me that some of these athletes, like he played like legitimately really good college basketball at North Carolina. Like he's one of the best pass rushers at all time. And he was like a D1 really good basketball player. And like what Travis Hunter's doing right now on both sides of the ball, it's still unfathomable to me that like Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson could play multiple pro sports at the same, like just some of the stuff that some of these guys can do is just unfathomable.
So I remember when I was my first year with Carolina, I thought Mike Rucker had a better year than Pep.
Sure. He was a good player, Rucker.
Yeah, he was a hell of a player. But I thought he had a better year. Quite frankly, I didn't think it was even debatable. But Pep went to the Pro Bowl and Mike got no love. And I didn't really get it until I got to the Pro Bowl. So I go to the Pro Bowl and I'm thinking, this is so to kind of parallel it.
Yep.
Larry Allen is, the best guard maybe in the history of the league. But at this point, Larry Allen isn't Larry Allen that I grew up with. He's old Larry Allen.
Right.
And Larry Allen was, John Madden kissing his ass every week and, us sitting in Green Bay going like, how many votes are you going to give Larry, this whole thing. So I go to the Pro Bowl and I remember I lined up at like, Larry plays left guard. And then so it was like Larry, Hutch and I, and Hutch and I are like, we're going to play right guard because Larry, it's Larry, like whatever he's in, he's just going to play left. So I'm over at right guard and we're doing like walkthrough. And Sean Rogers is there, and Sean's like, all right, Larry, take it easy now. Don't hurt me. And I went, and he wasn't joking. he was kind of joking, but he wasn't joking. I went, you go, oh, I see what's happening here. I might think the other guy's better, but they're not afraid of the other guy. Like, I thought I was playing better, but they're not afraid of me. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, they know I can beat them, but they're afraid he's gonna end them. And that's the difference in, you talk about these really good Bo Jackson, these really good athletes, is
Yep.
that the opposing player, there's actual fear. There's,
Oh
especially in
yeah.
football, there's actual fear that you're gonna like be physically harmed or something bad is going to happen to you as a result of facing this person, and that carries maybe more weight than some knucklehead like me would be able to quantify in the moment. But yeah, there's guys like that out there where people are. It was like Barry Sanders, man. Barry Sanders would. I know we're getting off topic, but Barry
Oh,
Sanders would
awesome.
literally go through. Uh, Barry Sanders would be so frightening to our defense, and that was his last year. Was my first year. That our defense would be walking through the training room, just hyping each other up, just to take a shot at tackling him, just to not be afraid to take a shot. Hey, if you don't take your shot, I can't take my shot.
Yep.
Hey, just go for it, man. Don't be worried about it. Just go. They would just begging each other to not be scared because he was so devastated. You knew you were going to look stupid. And so there's a very, very rare air of athletes, and Pep is one of them, that you're like, he could really make me look bad.
Yeah.
Like these other guys can beat me. I might end up on the top of my helmet, and the quarterback broke his legs. It's the Reggie White thing. They might make it look bad. There's just even in the National Football League, there's a level reserved for those 4 or 5 guys in the entire league that will just scare the hell out of you.
You never want to be the guy that is under Giannis getting dunked on. You don't want to end up on Sports Center because you got, pancaked or you got just completely embarrassed. Right. So I can only imagine it's crazy how much the mental side of that does play into it and what expectations are. And yeah, like both of them, Clay Matthews, Julius Peppers, both phenomenal players. But that's been an interesting one that's come up in the chat a couple of times. I said Clay was the better, pass rusher just based on time in Green Bay, but it's a fun conversation nonetheless. And I'm glad we had it because that spawned off a bunch of other fun conversations. I kind of forgot about Mike Rucker, and he was a really good player too. So that's a fun one too. All right, before we get to Packers Saints, just really quick. You brought up Josh Myers. Curious your thoughts on his. I think the two things that he usually does best, especially getting to the second level, when it's more of like a movement style game, his movement's really good. You can get to the second level, but getting to the second level, double teams. This game was better. What your thoughts on him this season? And as you look ahead, he's one of really, not many potential free agents for this team that they're going to have to make a decision on. They do have some potential pieces that could play in that spot. They could rebuild it through the draft, free agency, etc. Thoughts on his season and what did they bring him back for 2025? I guess I'll put it that way.
Well, anytime you don't mention his name is probably a good thing at the center position, unless you're a real dominant Charles Bentley kind of guy. I just thought he really, again, sometimes when you're watching film, for whatever reason, a guy catches your eye, and he caught my eye this week because I thought that his movement in space was excellent, and he sprung some sprung some blocks. I thought the double teams for the most part were excellent in critical parts of the game. He still is, the deficiencies are still there. I think he's gotten a lot better over the last 2 years, certainly.
Yep.
He's a lot better this year than he was last year. As to whether or not I would keep him, if I'm putting my GM hat on, I just think he's going to be able to make some money in free agency. And it's like the hard part about offensive line is, one, you don't know how good your offensive line really is in this scheme. You really don't know. I mean, we can always talk about what they're good at and this and that, and then you're not wrong. But I don't know if anybody in the league saying like, oh, the Green Bay Packers have one of the best offensive lines in the league. I can't imagine anybody saying that. But they're they have one of the better offenses. So it's like usually those two things go together.
Yeah.
But you say that about Detroit, you say that about Philly. Like there's the teams out there that you're going to make that comment. You're just not going to make it here. Because they drafted Jordan Morgan, I don't imagine that Goody's going to allow Jordan Morgan not to start next year. I just don't see that happening. And so when I look at Sean Ryan, I think, Sean could probably play center. and they can move Jordan. Jordan Morgan goes and plays right guard, and then they kind of have their unit. And they can have that for a number of years until the next, whoever's going to be the next guy. Probably Jenkins has to get re-upped again, but I can't imagine Jenkins ever wants to leave here. I mean, why would you?
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I see Sean Ryan being a guy that could play the center position. I don't know how he is upstairs as far as being able to make calls and all that kind of stuff, but assuming that he can, just the way that he moves anyways, it'd be conducive to maybe playing that center spot. And then you can get Jordan Morgan in at right guard, and I think you have a pretty good, assuming that he develops, you have a pretty good offensive line there, and you don't have to pay. I mean, I think we talked about this before, like the going rate for center, he's probably going to make over, 10, 12 million, $13 million a year. And It's like, without insulting anybody, you just go, I don't know if I would pay that kind of. I know it's not a lot of money in this market, but it's just like, where else can we spend that money if we have Monk? Obviously the kid, the ACC kid, is going to be available to at least get a look at center. You certainly have the footwork for it. So I think I guess my long-winded answer is I just can't imagine that they bring him back for anything more than a severe discount, because I think that they've started the process of replacing him 2 years ago. I think it's already there. I think when they drafted Sean Ryan and then Morgan and then Monk, you just go like, well, one of those guys is going to be able to fill into that one position that we need on the offensive line. So
I think so too. I think it's going to be a very similar John Runyon Jr. situation where some team offers him more than 10 mil and they say, cool, thanks so much for all you've done. And we'll let some other team pay that big contract, and we'll just kind of churn through the offensive line like we always do and kind of continue that moving forward. So I'm kind of there too. It wouldn't stun me if he all of a sudden found his way back, but if I had to guess and kind of like you go ahead.
Well, see, even like when Mark and I left the same year, and that next year they went 4-12, and they do, quite frankly, like the guys that they got to replace us had a hard year. That was a difficult year for them for a number of reasons. But within 3 years, they had
who was your?
Yeah, Adrian Clem had to. Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I met Adrian Clem that offseason in Arizona, and him and I are very friendly now. But that offseason, we had a parking lot confrontation because he hated me so much because the media was shitting on him so much.
Right.
But my point was that within 2 or 3 years, they had Josh and TJ, and it's, life goes on, right? So like life goes on with all this stuff. So if you get rid of them, like Matt LaFleur is going to figure a way to hide if they need to hide somebody, and they probably don't, because I think any one of those 3 guys is going to do more than a good job of filling in at that position. So, we always think that you lose one of those players and they start talking about continuity and this and that. That's good for a couple of weeks, but after that, you just keep playing ball.
Yeah, no, I'm totally there with you, and hopefully that transition goes a little bit better at the beginning than losing you and having to go in that direction for a couple of years. But like you said, ended up with Sitting and Lang, so it didn't take too long there. Really quick, Packers Saints. What are you looking for in this one?
I know Darren Rizzi from Miami. He's if there was going to be a special teams coordinator that becomes their next like NFL head coach, I think he would be it. Honestly, he's just got that personality, command guy. I'm sure he's running a tight ship and rallying those troops. I just think you saw it in the Seattle game. It's just such a difficult job when your quarterback's hurt to have any expectation of winning a football game in the National Football League. And they've got some talent on both sides of the ball, certainly. But you look at this and you go, if the Packers show up, they're just astronomically better on paper for no other reason than Jordan Love is a really good quarterback and they don't have one on the other side. And that, I think it just becomes an issue. So the expectations here certainly for me is that they continue their winning streak. And this is one of those games that you probably earmarked early in the season that they were going to win. And I don't know if the spread is coming out, but I have to imagine it's pretty high.
Do you have a guess? I know what it is. Do you have a guess?
Yeah, sure. It's at Lambeau, and it's another night game. So it's probably 4.5.
It's significantly higher.
14.5. I don't know.
It started at 13.5. It's now at 14. 14-point favorites.
No way.
Yeah.
Is this college?
When I saw it, I thought maybe Like before I saw, I thought maybe like 7-8 points for Green Bay. Like maybe it's because Saints had won 3 out of 4 prior.
Yeah,
to
I mean, I'm trying to be conservative. Rizzy's going to have him ready to play. I promise.
Big time.
Yeah.
And they almost beat Washington last week. Came down to the final play, 2-point conversion at the end to beat Washington, who's right now just a spot below Green Bay in the wild card standing or in the standings or whatever. So like I was pretty stunned by 14 points, but yeah, that's where it's at right now. So
I'll tell you what, man, that is a ballsy bet if you're going to take Green Bay in 14. I mean, I don't have that kind of juice to me.
I'm gonna put $0 on this, but Mike, for a beer next time you're in the Green Bay area, I'm gonna say Packers cover that spread. They win by more than 14 in this one.
Right, I tell you what, it's hard. It's hard to argue with you if the Saints can't score a damn point, but we'll see.
It did surprise me. I do think the Saints are a little bit better than that. Maybe deserve a little bit more respect than that. Kamara maybe being out in this one maybe played a little bit of a factor too. We'll see. We'll see what the injury report brings this week. But as of right now, Packers by 14. Mike, you're the absolute best. Tell us about the YouTube channel and where we can find all your great work.
Yeah, just did a show on this game on our Process to Perform channel on YouTube, that Block Party podcast. Broke down a bunch of the tape. I think there's some interesting stuff there. We did a lot. We did something this week on the why the backs offset differently. I think a lot of people asked me that question, so I tried to tackle it. It was an easy point and shoot there against the Seattle team. And then you can find me Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. Andy, thank you as always for having me on.
You're the absolute best. We'll talk to you soon. We might have an off week next week with the holidays, but we'll catch up sooner rather than later. Appreciate you a ton. That's going to do it for Mike and I today. Follow him at Mike Wahle 68. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.